everyone. Welcome to Tonal Talk. My name is Kate, your host and community manager. I am so excited for tonight's Tonal Talk. We have the legendary Dr. Stacy Sims on tonight to answer your questions about female nutrition and fitness. Before we do that, before we bring her up, I have a few announcements, but I'm going to fly through them because we have so many questions submitted. Truly amazing. I love it so much. Before we do that, I'm going to pin this to the top of the group so you all can find me. There we go. Please tell me if you're tuning in, if you can hear me, if you can see me, where you're watching from, and what your tonal workout was today. I would love to know. All right, so while we're waiting for people to join us, a few things coming up in the community. We've got, as you know, our book club book of this month is obviously Roar by Dr. Stacy Sims. Fantastic read. Our members have been loving it. It's not too late to grab a copy. And you can also join us for our Zoom discussion next Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Even if you haven't read the book, we're a fun group of people and we like to hang out and talk about the book. So join that. The link is above. We also just announced what month is next month? April. Book club pick of the month, and it is Grit by another fantastic female author, Angela Duckworth. It is about the power of passion and perseverance. I'm about a third of the way through, and it is completely changing the way I look at talent versus hard work. Highly recommend. Please grab your copy, join the book club group. That is linked above. Moving on, we've got Coach Liz's reverse training birthday workout. That's going to be tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time in the official Tonal community. That's your chance to get her back for all of those live workouts and programs where she has made you cry. You get to be the coach. You get to tell her what to do on Tonal for, I think, 34 minutes because she's turning 34. So that's going to be a good time. Then right after that, Coach Woody comes on for Ask a Coach. So if you've got training questions that aren't answered tonight, drop them in Ask a Coach for Coach Woody tomorrow. That's also linked above. Finally, we have the April challenge just announced. I know this is going to be old news to a lot of you, but it's very exciting. It is the new Tony Horton 20 and 20 Pump Up the Volume Challenge that's going to be co-hosted with Coach Action Jackson himself. Jackson and Tony have worked really closely to program Tony's tonal workouts. And so he knows the program very well, and he's going to be running that challenge with Tony. So you get a 2-for-1. So that challenge group is also linked above. Get in there. It's going to be a very good time. You've got Facebook Live Q&As with Jackson and Tony, a curated calendar with added action workouts curated by Jackson. Tons of good stuff. So get in there. My last announcement is that the Tonal Strength Institute Summit is happening next Wednesday. So 1 week from today, from 9 a.m. Pacific time to 1 p.m. Our own Dr. Stacy Sims will be speaking at that summit. She has a talk called Promoting Optimal Adaptations to Exercise, Lessons Learned from Professional Sport. So go register for that. Even if you can't make it, if you have work or other obligations, that's totally fine. Register and you can log in for 30 days after the event and watch all of the amazing discussions by the Tonal Strength Institute Advisory Board. And it's free. So go register above. All right. With that, I told y'all I was going to fly through that. With that, I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Sims to Tonal Talk tonight. She is a renowned exercise physiologist and nutrition scientist. Her focus has always been on uncovering the mysteries behind exercise, nutrition, and performance for women because, as we know, it hasn't been an area of focus. If you watched our last Tonal Talk, you know why. Having directed research programs at Stanford, AUT University, and the University of Waikato. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, Stacy. You're going to have to correct me. Dr. Sims is dedicated to clarifying the balance of female health and performance in a way that everyone can understand. And tonight, she is here to answer your questions. So please help me give a warm welcome to Dr. Stacy Sims.
Hello.
How are you today, tomorrow?
Yeah, no, I'm excited because I actually get to come to California on Monday. First time out of the country in almost 3 years because of border lockdown.
I'm so excited. I get to meet you.
I'm so excited. I get to meet everybody. Finally, face to face, not on Zoom.
It's amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll see you at the cocktail party.
Awesome. I have to remember not to wear my Zoom clothes, which is like, pajamas from the bottom down.
I mean, honestly, I think I don't own anything other than athletic clothes, so you're good.
Yeah. Okay, good. Good to know. Good to know.
So we had a ton of questions submitted, which was amazing. I'm so grateful to have you here to answer all these questions. About 30 questions submitted. We're going to prioritize the ones that were pre-submitted, and then we'll take live questions at the end if we have time. I've kind of broken them down into 6 categories, and we'll go through them based on the number that kind of fit into that category. So we've got nutrition, supplements, training with your cycle, peri through postmenopause, early postnatal training, and the men of Tonal. The men of Tonal had some great questions.
I saw that. I was so excited that there were men asking questions. That's fantastic.
Yeah. But we put them last because it's Women's History Month. So sorry, guys.
I know, but we do need men to talk about it too, so it becomes more normalized. So I was really excited to see that. Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect.
Okay. So let's jump in. Are you ready?
Yeah. Let's go.
All right, so our first question about nutrition comes from Kenthea Dinkler, and full disclosure for everyone, I apologize if I mispronounce everything or get pronouns wrong. I'm going to do my very best. But Kenthea says, hey there, Dr. Sims, can you talk a little bit more about why you recommend against fasting? I feel like everywhere I turn, there are recommendations to fast, especially in weeks 1 and 2 of the menstrual cycle. So I'm curious to hear more about the science behind not fasting versus what others are claiming are such great benefits. One being autophagy. Thanks in advance.
Yeah, so all the health benefits of fasting come from a clinical population that doesn't exercise. So if you start looking at the research around exercise, you actually garnered the same benefits, if not better benefits, from exercise than you do fasting. So when you start doing fasted training or fasting with exercise, it has a negative effect in the fact that it's a lot of stress on the body. And if you are doing any kind of fasted training or your fasted window comes at a point where your body's in a breakdown state most of the day, then it signals to the hypothalamus of the brain that, hey, wait a second, there's not enough nutrition coming in. So for women, we have a significant threshold of around 35 to 40 calories per kilogram of body weight before we start seeing dysfunction. For men, it's 15. So men can get away with fasting and still get benefits. And you'll see that, when you see a lot of couples or people who are training together 3 or 4 months down the road, the woman hasn't really changed much, or she might even start putting on belly fat, but the man has leaned up and gotten fitter and faster and stronger. It's because of these threshold differences. So when your brain starts perceiving there's not enough calories coming in, then it downturns 2 areas called the kisspeptin neurons, and those are responsible for appetite, also responsible for endocrine function. So when you start getting those downturned, you start having your thyroid that gets downturned, and after 4 days, we see this happening, that you start having a little bit of thyroid dysfunction. And around about a month, when you're adding that exercise in with fasting, you start reducing your luteinizing hormone surge. So if you reduce your luteinizing hormone surge, then you're going to have more and more anovulatory cycles and start having menstrual cycle dysfunction. All of that also indicates to the body that we're in a breakdown state. So if you're trying to build lean mass and lose body fat, fasting is not the way to go, especially if you are exercising, especially if you are fasted exercising. So fuel in and around your training. And the best way to fast and garner some of the benefits that you don't really need to if you're exercising, because you get them anyway, stop eating after dinner and then eat breakfast. So no late night snacks.
Wow. Okay. That was one way to open it, with a ton of knowledge, and just that puts everything I've heard on every podcast, just flips it on its head.
Because I'm about female data, not about male data.
Exactly. And that makes total sense why it would work for men and not for women. So thank you so much. We do have a follow-up question on that from Julia Gracie, who says, I know you recommend not working out in a fasted state, but I work out first thing in the morning because that's the only time I have a lot of energy. And if I don't keep my torso upright for about 3 hours after eating, drinking, my food and liquids come back up. So eating before a workout isn't really an option. I can have small sips of water, but that's it. What advice do you have for people like her?
You can use protein water, so protein infused water. So you can look at using a micronized whey isolate that dissolves and ends up being clear. So you are getting some nutrition in, and you can use that during your training. So as long as you're getting that amino acid circulation up and your blood sugar dropping, your body's like, okay, wait, there's nutrition coming in. For people who don't have the issue with like regurgitating fluid and food, something super small, half a banana, piece of toast with butter, could be a protein fortified coffee. You just need around that 150-ish calories to bring blood sugar up and drop cortisol and signal to the brain, yes, there's nutrition coming in. So let's do this stress, but we can recover from it.
Amazing. Do you have a brand in mind? A lot of people have been asking for specific brands for some of these things.
No, it's really hard because I live in a different country, for one.
True.
And it's changing all the time. And the way that I tell people to look is you can go to the NSF website, which lists clean products. Consumer Mag also has different ways of looking and seeing. If you're looking for protein, always look for the highest percentage that you can get. So you look at whey protein isolate or hydrolyzed whey protein, because then they're not full of fillers and flow agents, and you aren't getting the lower quality whey concentrate. So there are some things to look for on the labels, but it's really difficult to make suggestions. I might be able to after I'm in the States for a few weeks, and I can go look at all the stuff, and then I can. But sitting here, not so much confident in making the right choice for people over there.
Sounds like we might have to take a little trip to Whole Foods together.
with the little camera, so we can do like a little live.
Let's do it. It's so fun. And you can just like rip all of them apart, the bad ones.
I know. Go for this one. This one's good. Yeah.
That's fun. And then Tonal will get sued.
No, I'll take it. It's me. I made you do it.
Okay. Next is also about fasting. So Austin McLeod says, I'm curious if that evolutionary stressors, I think it's what evolutionary stressors contributed to men doing better with fasting and women doing better with carbs gathering. Do you have thoughts around, like, from an evolutionary perspective, why this is the way it is?
Yeah, because women have to grow a baby. So it's all about reproduction, right? So women need more calories in order to keep their endocrine system going. And we see that when you start having too low calories, you just have amenorrhea, right? Menstrual cycle dysfunction. And the body shuts down and the body puts on fat because it's like, I don't have enough. I need to conserve fuel so that I can get my endocrine system going and have babies. So the evolutionary thing is men went out to find the calories, and when there weren't calories, women didn't reproduce. So that's the whole thing.
Bring us the calories, men.
Yes, exactly. Feed me the carbohydrates.
Yes. Okay. Tess Remay Miljevic says, from what I understood from the book, women who weight train should have a whey protein shake before working out, like you just said, then again after, as well as casein protein shake near bedtime. If I absorbed that correctly, would you recommend that to a woman who does about 30 to 45 minutes on tonal strength training and is not doing any other type of exercise that day? It spoke a lot about, your book spoke a lot about elite athletes. So curious about the average just get it done type. Your book was brilliant, by the way. I've recommended it to many. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So if we're looking at someone who is doing 30 to 40 minutes of strength training, you can have a little bit of protein before, and then afterwards your next meal, and that can be your protein. But again, the goal is making sure that you have nutrition coming in and around your training, regardless of what your goal is. Because like I say, if you exercise on purpose, you're an athlete. So it doesn't have to be about like really detrimental to a calorie intake or really burning calories. It's the stress your body's under. And you want the nutrition around the stress so that your body can learn, great, now I'm going to adapt to that. So if I have that stress again, I can overcome it. And this is how your body gets stronger. So even if you're an everyday type person, have that protein definitely after, and that can be your next meal. It doesn't have to be a special shake.
Makes sense. Thank you. Okay. Dan Crevier says, thanks for such a great book and for engaging with the community. This is one of our men of Tonal. I've learned a ton. I had a question about sugar. In chapter 11, you talk about avoiding fructose and say that cane sugar slash sucrose is okay. Isn't sucrose half fructose? I would think it would be something to avoid.
I know a lot of people think that, but When the body hydrolyzes or breaks down sucrose, you get glucose and fructose. But there are enzymes that limit how much fructose can be released at a time by limiting how much sucrose is being broken down. So your body's never really overloaded with fructose that it can't handle. If you're taking in straight fructose, then your body gets overloaded with it because there is no rate limiting step. So when we look at sucrose in the way that your body handles it, it optimally hydrolyzes or breaks it down so your body can handle the glucose and the fructose. It's the straight fructose, especially from like the high fructose corn syrup or fructose in a lot of the sports products, that causes a lot of issues. But not fruit, because fruit wraps it in pectin, and pectin also helps the body deal with fructose.
You got the answer for everything.
There you go.
Dan, I hope that helped. Okay, we got a lot of questions about macros. So Heather Morris-Geller asked, can you go over how to figure out your macros? And for weight loss, what is the best deficit ranges? I'm postmenopausal.
So I am not a fan of macros. I'm also not a fan of calorie counting because when we start getting down to nutrient science, like how many X grams of protein, X grams of carbohydrate, we become so focused on that we forget about the whole food aspect. When we start talking about calories in, calories out, we also know that doesn't necessarily work either because it's the quality of the food. When we're looking at changing body composition, the way that we do that, even if we're postmenopausal, again, is fueling for that exercise stress and making sure you don't have large gaps in the day where your body can get into that breakdown or that catabolic state. Protein becomes super, super important, especially in postmenopause. So we look at protein in and around training, and then we want to look at even doses of protein for all of our meals. And when we do that, our body's like, great, there's a lot of amino acids that I need for my immune system, for brain health, for gut health, for lean mass development. And then it also gets a signal of, I don't need to hold on as much body fat. So again, it's all about the stress and being stress resilient. And if you don't give your body food, then it's not going to be stress resilient. And you're not going to lose the weight. And this is really apparent. And we see in perimenopausal women are starting to put on belly fat, and in postmenopausal women who are trying to lose the extra poundage that has come on perimenopause. It's polarizing the training and doing really high quality training, following it up with good protein. And then if you need a calorie deficit, because you're like, I just want a little bit of calorie deficit, you're looking at 150, maybe 200 calories towards the evening or at night. So that when you go to bed, your body still has the ability to repair because it's not completely depleted. And then when you wake up, you feel hungry. So you're fueling again when your body needs it. So it's a timing aspect more than macros and calories in, calories out.
Again, flipping literally everything I've ever heard right on its head. And I think a lot of us breathed a big sigh of relief when you said that we don't need to track and count every bite that goes into our mouths.
No, we're not built that way. And nutrient science is one of the things that frustrates me. It gives a lot of good insight of the way the body uses things, but then it gets misconstrued into how to eat. There's I'd say most of the people in the world right now don't actually know how to eat and what it means to be full, what it means to be satisfied, what quality means, because we've lost that connection from so many nutrient science type messages of you need this amount of protein, this amount of carbohydrate, take this vitamin C supplement. So all those little bits and pieces where we're like, wait, no, what happened to the whole food and how all of that works in our body together? And what is a hormonal response when we're actually nourished?
Fascinating. Okay, well, we do have a few more questions about macros, though. We have one about, can you recommend the best app or website for macro tracking? But I'm guessing you don't have a recommendation for that.
I don't. Sorry. No.
This next one talks about macros, but also young women. And so I would like to ask it still. Leslie Poteet Hamilton says, I have a 16-year-old girl who plays volleyball and soccer. She's a goalie. Should we be tracking macros with her? If so, what should the percentages be? And if macro tracking isn't the thing you recommend, what do you recommend?
So I work with a lot of youth athletes as well. And the biggest issue there is not eating appropriately. So, they might get up and have breakfast, or if they have training first thing in the morning, then they might pack it and they might forget to eat it. I actually work with a lot of girls who don't want to eat at school because they're too busy and they don't feel comfortable eating in front of people. So it's one of those things. It's like we have to look at ways of getting small snacks throughout the day so that when you get to practice, you're well fueled. And then we have something in the car. It can be chocolate milk. It can be a protein drink. It can be hard-boiled eggs. So you're getting some nutrition in after the training session before you get home. And then I also have some where their training sessions after dinner. So then they don't get home until 9 o'clock. What do we do? Well, this is where we look at backing things up in the day. So you're having dinner before you actually go training, and then you're having like a bowl of yogurt with fruit as a recovery. So you're getting some carbohydrate and protein before you go to bed. So again, it's not about the macros. It's about the timing of the food and making sure that she's getting enough food coming in, especially if she's doing 2 sports. As she's growing, her calorie needs are relatively high. So we need to make sure that she's eating enough. And when we hit that big rock of making sure that we're eating enough and seeing how the body responds, then if we need to, we can start manipulating according to menstrual cycle, where we increase protein in the luteal phase, we increase the amount of carbohydrate you're eating in your diet in the luteal phase, that your body has enough, and then we can play around a little bit in the follicular phase. But the first and foremost is eating enough.
So if you're not tracking specifically, how do you know if, say, a young woman, 16, who might not be cued into hunger and fullness cues or have gone through a lot of what many women have with, dieting for years. So maybe they would be better at listening to their hunger and fullness cues. But if they just don't, but they aren't tracking, how do you know if you're getting enough or if, to increase during which phase?
Yeah. So the way that I started a couple of not workshops, but sit down, and first I need to find out what their nutrition knowledge is. Do you know what protein is? Do you know what carbohydrate is? Do you know about how much you eat? So we really start kind of doing food logs with pictures. So they're not concentrating so much on macros and how much I'm eating and logging it all, but they take pictures, and I use something like Meal Logger, and I have a look and say, okay, this is where we need to increase or decrease, or we need to move this around training. So it's kind of the education process. And then in that, I'm also feeding forward and back. Okay, you are eating enough. We need to increase here. We need to manipulate here around training. And then if we get that down and they're still not cued into what it means to be hungry and what it means to be full, then we set it as, here is the breakfast, here is the lunch. Now I want you to have a whole of about 4 hours. And I want you to describe how you're feeling in that 4-hour window. Are you getting headaches? Are you getting really sleepy? Is your temperature do you feel hot? Do you feel cold? Do you have lethargy? So then we can start identifying what that feels like and attribute it to, well, actually it's hunger. This is what hunger feels like to you. So when you start feeling this isn't when we need to eat. So it is a big education process because, like I said before, we've all lost that feeling necessarily of what it means to be full, what it means to be fed, what it means to eat appropriately throughout the day. When we get that dialed in, then it becomes more of an intuitive eating. And naturally, they increase carbohydrate and protein in the high hormone phase because the resting metabolic rate comes up and our nutrition needs come up. So they naturally start eating more during that high hormone phase. So it doesn't become so much a manipulation. But that education piece at the start is really important.
Oh, I wish I had that growing up. And I love the idea of tracking with photos instead of, logging.
Writing it down.
Numbers can be really triggering. Fascinating. Okay. And let us know in the comments if you've done this with your kids, if you've had them track with photos or have any experience with this. I'd love to hear. Okay. This is from Erin Lowe. Erin says, what are your tips for diet and exercise schedule for someone in their 40s with a very busy variable schedule who has a lot of trouble staying motivated to work out, overweight, and want to make healthy changes I can stick with?
So this is where people get overwhelmed with the idea of having to set aside like 30 or 40 minutes, right? We know that especially in the 40s, short bursts of high intensity is the best thing that you can do. So it can be 20, 30 seconds, full on, five reps of that, could run up the stairs, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. So we know that that high intensity work goes through the idea of improving cardiovascular fitness, improving metabolic control, helps you lose weight. Once you start getting in the habit of doing those high bursts of intensity, then you really do need to look at resistance training. And the resistance training, again, doesn't have to be an hour. It can be 20 minutes of really heavy focused work. We're doing low volume, high intensity, 20 minutes of a few like power lifts and that kind of stuff. I know that Tonal has a couple of power programs that are really beneficial. So it's not about the motivation and trying to put aside so many hours. It could be, okay, my schedule's really variable, but I have to get up. And when I wake up, I'm going to do 2 minutes, 10 minutes of this. Maybe I'm going to do 5 minutes of stretching to prep my body and 5 minutes of some really short intervals. That wakes you up. It sets you up for the day. Your metabolism starts to respond well. And that's the gateway. That's the starting point of how to start really incorporating some really beneficial work into your lifestyle, especially when you're in your 40s.
20 minutes a day. Join Coach Tony's 20 and 20. There's also a ton of great quick fits. We also have some HIIT workouts. If anyone in the comments wants to share their favorite under 20-minute workouts, please do. But yeah, tons of great options.
Yeah.
And I just spilled my water.
Oh, no.
We'll pick that up later. Alrighty. Next is from Julia Gracie. What is the best protein bars for women? And again, I don't know if we have the same brands, but if you have some recommendations, we'd love to hear them.
I'm so far removed from what brands and what protein bars, because like one low-end Cliff bar here is $7. So I'm not going to buy them.
Yeah.
I can tell you how to make your own. Super, super easy. If you take brown rice syrup and a nut butter, and maybe it's a third a cup brown rice syrup because it's low on the glycemic index, third a cup of nut butter, put them in the microwave for a minute till it becomes bubbly, stir in 2 scoops of protein powder, and then if you want to, you can put in some cinnamon or some vanilla, some Rice Krispies, and then roll them into little bite-sized balls, and there's your protein bites.
All right, we're doing a cook-along next.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, that is the nutrition questions. Let's move on to supplements. So Heather Morse-Geller says, Dr. Sims, I know how you feel about supplements. Not great. Does this extend to fat burners?
Yes, totally.
I felt like you have a strong reaction to that.
Because fat burners aren't fat burners. Like they are things that really increase your sympathetic drive. So it's caffeine, it's taurine, it's the stacked stuff. Like used to be epinephrine and caffeine, and you could buy, I think they have like Hyper Rage is one of them that I saw in GNC when I saw them a couple of years ago, and like the Jack Stack. And it's all about increasing sympathetic drive. And if you're increasing sympathetic drive, you're increasing that flight or fight. And it's not a way to burn fat. It's a way to burn out. It increases cortisol. In women, it can actually promote fat gain. So if we're looking at fat burning, we want to make sure that you get really good, adequate sleep. If you do not sleep well, then your body is not going to let you let go of fat. That is the biggest thing that we find across the lifespan. You need to really focus on sleep and recovery. And then, we look at high intensity work, and that high intensity work gives you the epigenetic changes or the signaling to maintain lean mass and get rid of body fat. So there's no quick hit using fat burners. They don't work long term. They actually are very detrimental, can cause a lot of arrhythmias in the heart. If you're looking for a little boost pre-exercise, you can look at green tea or green coffee extracts. You can do a shot of espresso just to get that caffeine boost. But some people don't do well on caffeine. Some people metabolize it too slowly, don't get a boost. Some people are fast metabolizers and they burn out within 20 minutes. So you kind of have to play around with that caffeine. But if you're looking at the stacked fat burners, they just don't work. They are actually giving you the opposite of what you need. They give you too much cortisol, too much stimulus, and your body is also not going to adapt to the training that you're doing because it's too hyped.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. Does that also apply to pre-workout supplements? What are your
pre-workouts? Yeah, they're pretty much the same as they're jacked with caffeine. So my 18-year-old nephew has been asking me about supplements, and I've been purveying them, and he's very much into, I need a pre-workout. I was like, well, a pre-workout's goal is to boost you up so that you can actually hit higher intensities. You want to use them strategically. So if you're super flat, then you can look at something like beta-alanine. Beta-alanine, beet juice, caffeine. Those are 3 that are really beneficial because they work with your physiology to help prep you, but not overstimulate you. So beta alanine is a good vasodilator. Using beet juice or nitrates, that is also a vasodilator, but it also drops blood pressure so that you can delay fatigue. Both of those work in women and men. And then again, the caffeine aspect, but small doses. You don't need to have a 100 milligram dose. A 25 milligram dose can actually help with the fatigue factor, because the idea of the pre-workout is to minimize fatigue and allow you to get into your workout, feel good, hit those intensities. It's not about being all jacked up and getting that rage that we see in like the 1980s Rambo films, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Those make my skin crawl. I just can't do it.
No.
Okay, next one is from Austin McLeod again. Says, regarding the tonal talk on Instagram that we did before, creatine seems to be validated for women, but other items Dr. Sims says are not efficient, which you were saying a lot of other supplements like don't bother, but creatine actually yes. Did you mean efficient or not evaluated yet for the other supplements?
It's not efficacious, so they don't necessarily work. We do also need a lot more research in the way supplements work for women. Not only do we need research in how they work for women, but we also need research into how these supplements work outside of a temperate environment for both men and women. Because if we look at how they are evaluated, they're often evaluated in a relatively cool environment. But as soon as you start hitting hot or really cold, your physiology changes. And so these supplements work differently. So this is why I'm always like, real food first. Let's do real food first. Let's hit those big rocks. And then if we're looking at supplements, why are we using them? What environment are you in? Are you a man or a woman? Have they been evaluated? And there have been some really good reviews that have just come out in the past couple of weeks that are looking specifically at what ones are good for women, what ones need more research, what ones are good for like improving health, which is pretty much none. We know that when people are using supplements because they don't have the cofactor of real food, that actually doesn't benefit them unless you're already low in something. So iron, of course, does, but like a multivitamin or taking calcium or antioxidants, they actually don't extend life. They don't actually help the way that people say they have, because they don't have all the cofactors that the real food does to help your body actually use it. So that's why real food first, and then you need to be very pointed of why you want to use a supplement, what's it used for, what's the time and the place of use, and are you a man or a woman?
Is it the same for like an omega-3 supplement?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Food
so you
first.
food first. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah. And then you also want to look at, if you are using an omega-3 supplement, where's it coming from? What's the combination? So, there's all those questions about it too.
Yeah. Okay. A few questions about BCAAs. So Stacy Mishad says, with the recommendation for menopausal women to consume BCAAs pre-workout and whey protein mixed with casein post-workout, if someone is not tolerating milk derivatives or whey, but tolerates BCAAs, could they do the BCAAs post as well instead of whey and casein? If so, what amount of BCAAs post would be recommended, or what kind of plant protein would be sufficient post-workout?
So if we look at BCAAs, we use them before to help with fatigue and to help increase the amount of leucine that's circulating so that we have more for recovery. If we're looking at using BCAAs for muscle protein synthesis, we also need to add essential amino acids. And you can buy supplements that are the combination. It's not ideal. Like, again, real food is much better. If you are a vegan or lactose intolerant, dairy intolerant, the plant substitute for whey protein isolate is pea protein isolate. It's just on the very low level of hitting that cusp of leucine. Has 2.7 where we're looking for 3. You can add fermented branched chain amino acids. If you're getting fermented, then we know that they come from a plant source, not an animal source. So it's important if you're a vegan. And you can add that to your pea protein isolate to boost the leucine content.
Amazing. Do you have a good recommendation for a BCAA supplement? And that's from Caroline Powell Green, like a brand. I know brands probably.
No brands, no.
We'll find one.
Here. Yeah, but I will say, you look for fermented branched chain amino acids. If GNC still has their True Athlete line, so they have a good fermented branched chain amino acid that also is NSF certified and it's relatively inexpensive. So that is one that I know. And Clean Athlete, which is an American brand, they also have a really good fermented clean branched chain amino acid with essential amino acids. So
Okay.
those are two to look into.
Helpful. Okay. And in the book, you recommended taking them, but again, it was like a lot of elite athletes. For the regular person doing 30, 45 minutes of strength training, would we
Real food.
also recommend real food? Okay.
Real
So
food.
not everyone needs to go out and buy BCAAs. Cool.
No.
Okay, we're moving on to training with your cycle. Some of these, this one's like a hodgepodge of questions, but training and cycle kind of covered it. So Leslie Poteet Hamilton says, how do we work with our cycles when it feels like it is working against us? Training calendars and race dates don't care about when I am on my cycle. It's a shame, really.
No, it's not, because we know that there's a difference between training with your cycle and performance. So there is never a negative day in your cycle for performance. So, we get into our head that, oh, I'm 4 days out from my period, I'm not going to be able to perform very well. But if we change our thought process and say, I'm going to nail it, you will, because the psychological supersedes the physiological when we're talking about that one point in time of performance. When we're talking about training, this is when we can use our hormones to our advantage to get a better training adaptation, to be able to hit higher loads when our body lets us, and to recover when our body needs to recover. So they're two different scopes. And I think that there's a misstep in that communication, especially in the general media, where people are putting them all into one basket, saying there's no evidence to show. Well, there's no evidence to show for performance. We know there's no difference in the menstrual cycle for performance, but there is ample evidence to show that if you are using your hormones according to your cycle to have heavy loads when your body can handle it and deload when your body needs to deload, that you get better training adaptations and you get better ground. So don't worry if you are racing 2 days before your period. Tell your head, sweet, I got this, and you'll get it.
And read Roar. Lots of information in there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Lori Lund says, similar questions have been asked, and we kind of touched on this, but where's the line? At what point do I need to start thinking of formulated hydration and well-timed protein if I'm not an elite athlete? I do about 4 hours of strength training per week, 6+ hours of indoor biking per week, and about 75 minutes per day of flexibility, mobility, and walking. It sounds awesome. I'd like to be faster and stronger, but I'm not training for anything other than being as healthy as I can at 57. How much do the principles in this book apply to someone like me?
Welcome to my life, because I don't race anymore either. I just do something fun and adventurous every day. And like I said, if you're moving on purpose, you're an athlete. So where does the line, like she said, come when you're looking at functional hydration, putting supplements in? If you can do it with real food and you're taking care of your body by really making sure that you're nailing the nutrition in and around your training, the other focus is, how am I hydrating? We know that plain water doesn't hydrate, especially when you're under exercise stress. You need a little bit of salt in that water bottle. So it could be 1/16 of a teaspoon of salt in the water that you're using during your training session, and that helps with hydration. When you are looking at taking a step up, this is where you want to see, maybe I do need to start supplementing because I'm not getting enough calories in for what I'm doing. When you are in that, she said she was 57, you're in that postmenopausal phase, it becomes really, really important to nail that protein around exercise. Like, that's the biggest way that your body is going to keep adapting and you're going to get faster. And our appetite changes as we get older, our thirst sensation gets muted. So you do have to be very cognizant that you are getting enough in to support what you're doing. And when you are an everyday athlete and they're just, when we're not racing, everyday athlete, not racing, just doing it for fun and fitness, we sometimes misstep and we don't actually time and plan according to what we should be doing. So that becomes what we call the big rock. You want to make sure, again, that you're getting adequate nutrition and hydration in and around what you're doing. And that's how you'll see progression. And that's how you get fitter and faster.
That is so helpful. So a little bit of salt in the water bottle, Whole Foods. Perfect. Okay. This is from Amber Austin. Says, how can women who supplement with a consistent amount of progesterone train with their cycle, 100 milligrams a day? For example, since I always have a higher progesterone, am I always dealing with the days 15 through 24 scenario where gains are more difficult to achieve? Or despite supplementing, do I still experience dips and highs of this hormone and treat my cycle the same as the book recommends? Great question.
So this is where we want to talk about ratios. Like, what is the estrogen doing? Is she using micronized progesterone as a hormonal contraception, and so she's not having cycles? Is she having a micronized progesterone dose to help boost that luteal phase, to get rid of luteal phase deficiency? So those are some of the things that, of course, I would ask. And if we are looking at progestin only for contraception use, we know that you are in a little bit of a higher catabolic state. So you do need to increase your protein, but we don't know what estrogen is doing. So if you're using a progestin only pill, an implant, the depot, then you still have estrogen and you're still getting that balanced ratio so that you can train more like you're in your follicular phase. But if you are using progesterone from a medical standpoint because you're really low, then we have to look at what's happening in the ratios to determine if you're low hormone, high hormone, or if you're more in an even keel where you're approaching the perimenopausal, menopausal type hormone profile.
Okay, so would you recommend like a little bit more blood work with their doctor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so Joanna Myers-Casale says, if women's metabolisms drop to normal within 3 hours of exercise, should we aim for 2 workouts a day if weight loss is a goal? Asking as an endomorph with a sluggish metabolism, sad face. Thank you. This is such a great book.
No, not 2 workouts a day. So again, it's about the stress we're under, right? And it's not about lifting your metabolism, because our metabolism goes up when our heart rate goes up and we're under that stress. And so that happens when you're exercising, and your body gets into a fasted state when you're exercising too, because it's going through and using nutrients. If we want to change body composition and we want to lose weight, then we have to make sure that the kind of training that we're doing is a strong enough stress to instigate those changes. So this is the polarization. You're not doing hours and hours and hours of training, because that puts you in a state where your cortisol goes up, you don't get stimulus for adaptations, and you just stay in this breakdown state. So definitely not 2 a days. You want to look at what is your 1 a day. You need to plan it out. I want high intensity, and the high intensity needs to be full gas, and the recovery is really super low, staying out of that middle zone. Because that middle zone is where we don't see gains. This is where we see fat accrual. This is where we see poor recovery. So really polarizing. It might be high intensity one day, heavy lifting the next. And again, it's not about calories and raising metabolic rate. It's about the overall stress that we have and your body overcoming it to build lean mass. If you're doing 2 workouts a day, you're not going to get the stimulus to build lean mass. You're going to get the stimulus to break it down, because your body's like, hey, wait a second, I haven't recovered enough from that first stress, and here's this other one. I need fuel for it, and I haven't refilled my muscles, so I'm going to break down my lean mass. So if we're looking at our endomorph who wants to lose some body fat, really polarizing your training, dialing it in, eating appropriately for that training. And then, like I said before, if you want to look at a slight calorie decrement or decrease, set 150-ish calories towards the back half of the day away from training, preferably no snacks before bed, or taking 150 calories out from your dinner, so that you have that calorie deficit when your body can handle that calorie deficit.
Oh, isn't Stacy the best? No 2 a days, no fasted cardio, more carbs. You can come here and talk to us any day of the week.
And don't feel guilty about eating a big cheeseburger today after your big leg workout, because that's great.
That.
Yeah.
Protein.
Protein. As long as you don't do it every day, that's great. Like 80-20 rule. 80% you're on it, 20% it's life. It's fun.
And even if you do it more, don't feel guilty. Just move on.
Yeah. No guilt. No guilt.
Okay, let's see. We're moving along. So Jennifer Friel says, most of the discussion in the books relates to morning workouts. Basic question, is this a must for hormone regulation, etc., or just based on athletes you've worked with who happen to work out in the morning? And the notion that you get the workout done, over with, and go on with your day. I work from home and have early morning Zooms, have a hard time doing morning workouts. So I work out before dinner. Let's see. And then I just start the day as if I was not working out, but add protein immediately after, and then a prep light dinner. I'm a 50-year-old endomorph and have changed my macros to limit carbs and increase protein as suggested in the book, and seems to be hitting macros now and losing belly fat. So thanks. I just want to make sure that the notion of morning workouts is not a must. Also funny how most are excited about eating more carbs when the book for my body type says not to eat more carbs, but to reduce them, feeling ripped off, LOL. There's a lot there.
There's a lot. No, morning workouts are not a must.
Okay.
I think it's scoped that way because where I was living when we wrote the book was in fast-packed Silicon Valley, and everyone's like, get up, get it done, and then I get on with my day because I end up working late at night. So no, as long as you get it in. Now for peri and postmenopause, it's not about completely limiting the carbs. It's about the type of carbs that you eat. So gravitating more towards fruit and veg. So at night after your training, big plate of colorful fruit and veg, and then you're layering on the protein. And then, so that's the idea of carbohydrate. You can put in some good grains and stuff if you want to too, but it's really looking at what kind of carbohydrate. So carbohydrates is still good. Just got to figure out what kind. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're still cool, even though you're not telling us we can eat like cakes and cupcakes and brownies, but we'll let it slide.
You can.
20%.
Yeah. What I tell my daughters, listen to your tummy.
I love that.
Because they have like cake a day, and her friends are eating like 4 or 5 pieces of cake, and she's like, my tummy says to stop after 1. Okay, that's great.
Oh, how old are your daughters?
9. I only have 1. She's 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adorable. All right. So Erin McCarthy Garcia de Paredes says, I donate blood about every 8 weeks. That's awesome. Do you have any guidance for the post-donate recovery and training for the couple days afterwards? I didn't notice a change in performance, but I typically take a recovery day the following day, and I'm wondering if that's advised or even worth it. Interesting.
So yes, there is a method to the madness of donating blood and being able to recover from it. So if you can time, I know it sounds weird, but if you can time giving blood according to your menstrual cycle, sounds weird, but it's true. That first week, that bleed phase, your body doesn't have a high hepcidin concentration. So this means that you can actually absorb iron and you can recover faster because your body's already in tune with losing blood. So if you can time it in that first week, then if you're eating high iron foods and you're drinking a lot of water with salt in it to boost plasma volume, you recover a lot faster. But if you do it in the high hormone phase, then you have a really high inflammatory response and you can't absorb iron very well. So then it delays the recovery.
That is the exact opposite of what I would have guessed. So glad you answered that and not me.
There you go.
Glad you're answering all of these and not me. Okay, so this one is one that I would like everyone in the comments to please be respectful and remember that we are not here to debate politics. But I still want to answer this question because it is about science and it's important. So Julia Gracie asks, I have had normal menstrual cycles until I got the COVID vaccine in September. I haven't had a period since. Do you know if this vaccine affects women's hormones or just causes periods to cease in some? Can you not bleed but still have regular hormonal cycles? If so, how would I know to track where I am on my cycle?
I was so enthused about understanding this that we launched a massive research study through the Wild AI app. So we've had close to 8,000 women answer any kind of menstrual cycle dysfunction or symptomology and that kind of stuff. So what we found is if you got the vaccine after ovulation, most women would have a change in their menstrual cycle. They either stop bleeding or their cycle extended and they might have missed 1 or 2 periods and then it comes back. We also know that women who've had a history of amenorrhea or low energy availability tend to lose their cycle and it doesn't come back for 3 or 4 months because of the stress. It depends on when you get the jab, according to what phase of the menstrual cycle you're in, because your immune responses are different between the high and the low hormone phase. In the low hormone phase, your body is really attuned to taking on a virus, taking on bacteria, fighting it, learning vaccines. But after ovulation, your body becomes very pro-inflammatory. So you have a massive mast cell response, a huge inflammatory response, knowing that the menstrual cycle is based on an inflammatory response. When you have too much inflammation, then it changes menstrual cycle and the length of your cycle. So, according to the question, you're not alone in this, and it takes time for it to come back. What I would suggest is going and getting some blood tests to see if you have a luteinizing hormone pulse, because that's one of the things that goes awry in a massive inflammatory response.
Wow. Okay, that was fascinating. So It doesn't mean that, if you lose your period after the vaccine for a little bit, you're going to be infertile. It just means that your body took a big stressor. As we know, a lot of people had symptoms afterwards as part of the process, and that your period will likely come back. So
yeah. And the other thing is people are under a significant amount of stress leading into getting vaccines, right? So your body's already right at that level of stress, and it could have just been the tipping point. So again, like it's very common. We see it in so many different women who ended up with, a vaccine in the high hormone phase, or they had amenorrhea before. So you're in good company. If it's been more than 3 or 4 months and your period hasn't come back, go get luteinizing hormone or your 21-day progestin test. Even though you don't know what 21 days is because you're not cycling, you can go get a test, and then your physician can see what's going on.
Okay. And if someone does want to dig into this research a little bit more that you've been conducting, is that available?
We haven't published it yet, but we are doing a follow-up. So if you do want to be part of it, you can go to the Wild AI homepage under the COVID research, and then you can get involved in the research too. And we're looking across the board, women who are naturally cycling, hormonal contraception, perimenopause, postmenopause, because we also want to look at symptomology that might change. So we can look at like sleep patterns that might change. So a whole bunch of metrics that we're looking at.
I'm just so grateful that you exist and are doing this research.
Thanks.
And Devin, if you are listening, if you can try to drop that link into the chat, that would be awesome. I think a few folks are interested in that. And I will try to stop saying wow, even though I am just amazed by everything Dr. Sims says. They're starting a drinking game in the comments.
Oh, nice. Great.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I guess it is evening there. You can start a drinking game, but I'm like, wait, it's the middle of the afternoon.
A few more. So I'm going to, okay, yes. So Debbie Pino says, hi, Dr. Sims. Your area of expertise is fascinating and so vastly needed. Thank you for pioneering the way. My question is about menstrual cycle tracking. What data points do you recommend keeping track of? And is there a tracking method you suggest? I keep track of start and end dates, but in learning more about your research, I'm wondering if I should be tracking other factors such as ovulation, particularly with regards to my tonal training activity. Thank you for your thoughts.
Yeah, so tracking can be as complex as you want it to be. Like you can download an app and check in every day and write down all your symptomology and again sleep, or it can be as simple as tracking day 1 as the first day of your period to the next day 1, and then count back 14 days, and that's around ovulation. So you can really be as complicated or not. What we really mean by menstrual cycle tracking is knowing where you are in your cycle and how you feel on those particular days. Because again, you can find patterns within yourself, knowing that like 2 days before, and I'll use myself as an example because I'm always good at that. 2 days before my period starts, I'm like on fire. Like I'm like, let's hit it. Let's go, let's go, let's go. But like day 4, after I finish bleeding, day 4, I'm like, I feel a bit flat. And these are the patterns that I found throughout my life. So I was able to use that when I was racing and training, right, to my advantage. So when you start noticing these patterns, then it takes that subjective, like what's wrong with me, away. And it gives you that objective data to be able to plan your training accordingly.
Do you personally use an app?
I use about 4 different apps. Because
when are you releasing your own?
Well, I'm involved in a couple of them and I do research with them. So okay. I'm not going to release my own because it's like I'm helping other people develop one. So wearables are really hard. So let's just make sure they're good and take the eye away from male tech and put it into femtech in the female environment to actually get the algorithms right for women.
I love that. And do you have just like an app recommendation without like hardware tech or wearable tech that you have your clients use?
So yeah, I mean, I like Wild AI. It uses artificial intelligence. You can link it to other wearables, but it's really just an app where you check in and it learns your symptoms. And so it can tell you, hey, day 23, you always feel like this. Let's do this, 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 and modify. So it's kind of like someone over your shoulder telling you what to do. But if you don't want the artificial intelligence kind of thing, you can use something like Fitter Woman, where it's just more tracking and tracking symptoms. You can use Hello Clue. There's one that I laugh about. It's called Moody. I'm not a huge fan of it because it perpetuates a lot of the negative stereotypes about women, but it is something that you can use if you want to look at some of the mindfulness aspects. I don't necessarily agree with all of it, but There are lots of things out there.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay. This is another one from Austin. He says, when rowing, this is in the book, and the boat went flat, did all their periods coalesce? How common is it for periods to coalesce? Back in college, some people said the sorority houses would have their periods coalesce. Maybe this would help training protocol if this is very likely, or maybe it is better to have not everyone coalesce and make the team more even. So how do teams approach this, and what is happening when periods sync?
I know. It's a huge misnomer that periods sync. They don't.
Oh, they don't?
No.
Okay, I'm going to say it. Wow.
And it's a chance factor, right? So like in a sorority house, I'll admit I was in a sorority and everyone's like, oh, everyone's on their period at the same time. I'm like, if you have 80 or 100 women all living together, the chances that a lot of them are going to be on their period at the same time is pretty high. But no, you don't sync. The whole pheromone syncing up stuff, not true. With regards to training, and a lot of women end up like having similar cycles, it's a training stress. They're all under similar training stress. And most of the time people eat the same. So it's their body's response to training stress where their cycles end up overlapping, but not necessarily syncing.
Fascinating. Okay. A few postnatal, I'm going to go to peri-postmenopausal training. We have just a few minutes left. So Paige Sefton says, hi all, I'd love to hear Dr. Sims' thoughts on exercise in menopause, specifically using Tonal. I've read the concept of high reps, low weight for women in menopause, which isn't quite easy on Tonal since Tonal has the automatic intelligence. How does one determine what's best for us, and how can Tonal help enable that?
Oh, I can't wait till the Tonal Summit and I give my talk. But anyway,
go register above.
So actually, no. Women who are postmenopausal, actually, no, that didn't sound right. Women who are postmenopausal should not be doing low weight, high rep. Like the hypertrophy aspect. No, we need to lift heavy shit. And that's my saying. And I'm going to say it even if I'm not allowed to swear. I'm going to swear anyway. Because when we lose our hormones, we need that mechanical stress to stimulate myosin, which is a contractile protein, and to get the nerves working to create a stronger contraction. So we need that to maintain strength. And from that, we will get muscle cell development. So it is the high intensity and the heavy weight. So the high intensity is from the heavy weight. So high load, low volume rep. And this is how you benefit when you are peri-postmenopause.
Someone just said, is anything I've ever learned about fitness and nutrition true?
It is if you're a dude, but when you're a woman, it's different.
You mentioned high intensity interval training. Is there like you don't want to do this every day of the week? Would you recommend 2 days a week, 3 days a week?
Yeah. So when we look at if you're premenopausal, your body can handle about 4 high intensity days in a week. Okay. You could do day on, day off, day on, day off, because you can recover well. But when we get into peri and postmenopause, we need to scope it as, I usually say, 2 hard days in a row, and then easy, and then a moderate at night. So you're changing up when you're doing it, and then an easy, and then 2 high intensities in a row, because your body's learning it. You're like, high intensity stimulus, got it. Now I'm going to recover. I need a little bit of a stimulus, keep it going, recover, high intensity for a stimulus. And we do a 2-week block and then a 1 week of functional movement, true recovery before we hit it again.
Sounds like maybe a Tonal program in the making. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Sims, that is all the time we have today. I hope that this was helpful for members. I saw lots of great comments. Unfortunately, we didn't get to everything, but we got to a lot of them. So I might have to just beg you back to come and answer more questions at some time. So
sure.
Thank you so much. I know I learned a lot. I said, wow, about 48 times. And we all appreciate you. And I'll see you next week in San Francisco.
I know. I'm so excited. It'll be fun.
Cool. All right. Good night, everyone. We'll see you later. See you at the TSI Summit.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.